On planet Arrakis, you have to worry about three things: the sun in the sky, the worms below the ground, and the factions that roam the surface vying for control. You aren't safe anywhere for long, and you need to keep on your toes. Few survive the desert, and those that do fight for life every day. When I heard Dune Awakening was having an open beta weekend to anyone that pre-ordered, after they backtracked on their initial invite-only plan, I jumped in ready to fight for my life. Throughout most of Dune Awakening's marketing and in the dev discussions, I've heard about the threat of sandworms, the need to find water and keep yourself hydrated, all capped off with a riveting PvP environment. I couldn't wait, and neither should you. Here it is, boys and girls. Dune Awakening.
Stacked like we are.
Wait, are they
Look at they're running at us. Press something. Stop the swinging at me, bro. What is this? It's the dagger meta. Wait, jump on the bike. There's something.
Right. So, okay, that's the fighting. Maybe the worms. Maybe the worms will be more of a problem. No. What about the sun? Surely the sun and the heat will be a problem. In the 10 hours I played over the open beta period, I never once died to a worm. I never once died or even took damage from the lack of water. And despite my attempts, never found anyone to PvP with. And PvE? I'll touch on that. Now, it's important to set the scene here on what was available. The open beta only included the first act and zone, the Haga Basin. You couldn't get to the deep desert where PvP is always on. You couldn't get too far past the initial starting area. Players are all trapped in a fairly small location with population caps of 40 concurrent players. And it made me realize, like in most deserts, there isn't a great deal to do. That's not to say it's empty. What's there is pretty interesting. The world design is absolutely on point. I'm not a Dune aficionado. If there's a lore inaccuracy, I'm not going to know it. But the desert, the rocky outcrops, the old labs, abandoned stations, and crashed ships are incredible to move through. From a visual perspective, what I saw was great. Running through the rocky outcrops, finding resources, and sprinting across open sands was riveting in my first few hours. I was getting hooked. By about hour 4 or 5, I built a small base on top of a mountain. I developed a new armor set, built myself a gun, even built myself a motorbike to speed across the sands. But the more I crossed those open sands in the hours to follow without threat, the more I fought against lackluster NPCs. The more I dived into crafting, the more I started to ask myself what I was doing with any of it. This is a significant issue with an open beta of this size. Dune Awakening's heart is built around PvP-focused endgame, in which factions fight against one another, where guilds can engage in PvP at a large scale and vie for control of resources, where you get the best stuff and have the most fun. We didn't get to see or experience any of that. We were served a PvE MMO slice, and I'm going to give you my judgment off that slice and how I think that will differ from full release. First up, what we were served in the open beta told me that Dune Awakening has little or nothing to really offer in its PvE environment. By about hour 5 to 6, I was done. I built a base, I had all the water I really needed, I had an abundance of resources, and no real problem getting more. The only thing left for me to do was build better armor, better weapons, and a better base. But it became apparent very quickly that I was only doing that to then compete with artificially harder AI enemies. When I upgraded my gear and weapons, so did the enemies I was fighting as I moved from the starting area to the next. And okay, that's how games work, right? But it was so uninspired. And as I think on this issue, I realized that that's because nothing changed between the zones. In the first area, I was gathering resources to build basic stuff and fought basic enemies. In the second area, I was gathering resources to build advanced stuff, which I'll put that in air quotes for you through your speakers, because the advanced stuff was either a tier 2 version of what I had in the starting area, or some new weapons. But the enemies I was fighting hadn't really changed. They were functionally the same. One could now stun me, some had shields at a higher frequency, but their behavior, my engagement with them hadn't changed at all. And therein lies the problem. While I was unlocking better gear and more abilities outside of needing a higher damage stat on my gun, I never felt like I needed abilities to engage in combat. Half the time I'd throw down my turret which killed everything, and if I wanted to get spicy I'd shoot them myself. It wasn't tactical though. Collecting materials, new items, building additions to my base felt good at first. The systems do interact together well. It was clear and simple how to build my base and where to find the things I needed, which is a massive plus. There's fun to be had there. If I needed something, it was clear how I could go about finding it. But for longevity, I don't see it in the PvE space. Now, we haven't seen what PvE's endgame looks like, and a month out from release, this concerns me greatly. What I experience may pass as fine. Enemy AI is just so poor. It's an MMO, I expected that, but they kind of just run and walk at you. They might take cover, they might jump down from a cliff and slowly descend down, which looks kind of awesome, I won't lie about that. But they eventually became walking blood bags to me, or a place to get some additional ammo and grind for resources. And the problem with PvE content of this nature is that once it gets so boring, so does grinding for resources, crafting, and base building. Because what am I fighting for? Dune Awakening's biggest problem is going to be a result of this lackluster performance early on. By the end of my 10 hours, I was bored. The survival aspects were great to start. I couldn't believe how polished they seemed. Then they just didn't really impress me after that. There was no expansion on old concepts, just a slightly better resource collector, which is needed because starting out I could only mine copper. In the second zone, iron appeared. It doesn't appear in the first. So I felt an artificial need to move forward, simply because that's where the new resource is. And while the game should want me to progress, it felt weird building a base and within hours being told to abandon it and move forward, simply because the story and resources demanded it. Then I realized the next mineral I need is probably going to be in the next area, which wasn't available in the beta, and we'll need a new collector and a new base. So I'll have to build a lot of what I've built twice already in a new area. Again, it's nothing new, and while this is normal for many games, everything around it felt equally as bland. I never had to deal with sandworms being a problem. Water is laughable merely an hour in once you've harvested some blood and refined it in the base. You then need to collect a lot of blood, but I'm safe the entire time I'm doing it, so I'm just spending time collecting with no threat. So let's talk PvP and where this might salvage some form of identity. I attempted to engage in PvP for almost 2 hours straight, camping the limited PvP zones because I was just wanting to try it, and I didn't see a soul. I may have been unlucky. I've heard from someone else they regularly saw people in PvP zones, so I looked it up and found out that streamer vs streamer event organized during the beta was a shit show. This part I showed you earlier is peak PvP in Dune Awakening as we know it. Now, since that released, the devs have stated that this concept of stun locking players has been rectified, but can I just highlight for all involved that this made it all the way through their internal playtesting. It made it through their alpha and closed beta periods. It made it all the way to open beta a month from release. And a month from release, we've seen no real endgame PvP gameplay. To my knowledge, those in the closed beta didn't get to try it either. And we've seen no real PvE gameplay. And we have no real understanding of what's to come. Why didn't they allow players to interact with the open desert in the beta? I'm not really sure, and it means I can only speculate. My expectation of Dune's endgame is that it will function somewhat similarly to Rust, except you will have a nice PvE zone to mull around in after you've got tired of your ass being handed to you. Your progress in the desert is wiped every week, which is fine, because you're fighting over world boons, and if your faction wins and your guild is top of the list, you get to choose what the boon is. My concern is, if you aren't interested in the world boon, and let's be honest, if there's a 20-man clan over the hill and you're chilling with 2 or 3 friends like I probably will be, we are not the ones deciding on the world boon. So if the combat sucks, well, I don't know what's really left. It's a solid concept, and I haven't written off Dune Awakening despite how negative I've been here. I am giving the game the benefit of the doubt, and I will be there day one, I'm sure. But if you're wondering if you should also be there, I'd probably say no. Wait on some early reviews, wait on some consumer feedback, take a look at what is actually on offer before you get sucked into those early hours, and burn through your refund window to find nothing but endless sand and poorly implemented PvP. Dune Awakening is a great concept, but it's incredibly concerning that Funcom haven't shown us exactly what this endgame system will look like. We've had it repeatedly explained, we've seen snippets of fancy gameplay and cinematics, but we've not had an opportunity to experience it, and nobody has a month out, and they can still not really show us anything of substance. Look, in conclusion, my biggest concern is that they gave us an open beta of the starting area of an MMO that is incredibly PvP focused and will almost require you to engage in PvP to enjoy and compete in the end game. And they haven't shown us that. Keep it in mind. I don't have too much to say, and that's because they didn't have much else to show. Thank you very much for watching this video. As always, if you've enjoyed it, throw a like on it, subscribe if you want to see a little bit more. You being here, that's what really matters. If you want to come ask me some questions, hang out my stream and chat all things gaming, you can find me right here on YouTube and Twitch, 4 PM every Tuesday and Thursday, Australian Western Standard Time. Until then, I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.